Hey everyone, welcome to my first video of me locking in on my debut novel. I want to do NaNoWriMo not next November, this November, in like 2 weeks. So I have about 2 weeks to lock in, but first I had to figure out what about this was not working. I've been working on this novel since May. I came up with a concept for it as a part of my capstone creative writing project in my last semester. I just graduated with a degree in writing in May, and in my last semester, I had to come up with, a capstone creative writing project. And so I came up with this concept for this novel. I wrote the entire outline. So I have an entire outline to work with, but it was just not working. I was not interested in the story anymore. I lost interest in the story so quickly because the story is so straightforward and not interesting enough for me as a writer to even care to finish writing it, even though it should be. The concept itself is interesting. So the other day I set out on a mission to sit down and figure out why all of this was happening to me, and as I'm journaling it, I start to realize. So originally I thought, I just need to rework the outline and move scenes around, because as I was trying to write it, that kept happening to me naturally, and I thought, okay, well, if motivation is low, you can't rely on motivation alone to write a book, so let me just work on the scenes that are the most interesting first to get into the story, get into the characters, and get a flow of work going. And then as I become more familiar with my story and my characters, I can go and write the less quote-unquote exciting scenes. No, I realize it's not a problem with the structure, there's just not enough to the story for me. I don't think I would pick up the book as it was on a shelf on my own to read. So what I did was I opened up a new Notion project and I put in the current working summary. I put in the summary exactly as I had been giving it to people. Most of these names are different, the kind of plot is different from what you're seeing, so no spoilers, but that's what I did. I opened up a Notion, and this Notion is completely for this project. I do most of my work I like to do on paper. That's why I have my little Louise Carmen journal that's for this kind of stuff, because I work better writing it down physically. But I do also like to have a Notion for my book projects, because you can kind of put pictures and the writing all together, because I always have a Pinterest for my books, but sometimes it's nice to have just a digital space. And I also like that it's synced on my phone and everything, because it's on an app, whereas Scrivener, it's not synced. So if I'm writing on the go and I want to go on my phone and see what the vibes are, whatever, in case I need inspiration, it's there. But speaking of Pinterest, here I am on Pinterest kind of looking at the original vibes to see okay, this is where my head was at when I was still excited about the project. The original vibes, and then I kind of have a what's not working section. I'm realizing that the all caps title with the emoji is really kind of looking like ChatGPT. I swear on my life, I made that myself. I put the emoji there myself. I made the header myself. If you ever use Notion, it's just like that. But I realized that the problem is not the structure or the outline or anything like that. It's the fact that there's just not enough to this story. So I realized that I want a fantasy aspect. I really need some sci-fi. I need a magical element, something like that, not only to make it more interesting to me, because that's what I like to write. And I realized this is not a matter of me pushing myself out of my comfort zone. I've pushed myself out of what's even interesting to me, and that's why I'm not being drawn to want to write it. I have the motivation, but then I go to write it and I'm bored. So I'm adding a magical element because that makes it more interesting and exciting for me. I also just think that with the message that I'm trying to get across with this book, because everyone has their why. I have my why for this project. I think having a magical element or a sci-fi element as a writing device with which to get that message across is gonna help and make this more interesting. So I'm making a new Pinterest board with just kind of the vibes, although it's kind of hard. It's kind of hard because I feel a lot of urban fantasy pins are, there's just not a lot of it. There's not a good combination of old, traditional fantasy with modern, because it's not sci-fi, it's more a modern book with fantasy elements, and there's just not a lot of it unless it's AI, because there's so many AI pins on Pinterest these days. It's so annoying. So I go back to my little Notion and I do the reworking section, what I want to change, because something is just not working and now I figured out what I could do to make it more interesting to me. Now, I still have to outline this book, I think, although I'm kind of contemplating making it like one of the first books that I ever pants, which just means writing with no outline and just seeing where it takes me. After I kind of had this breakthrough, I took my little free write and we went to a park and I just started writing. This is a draft that I had started like the day before, and I actually end up like scrapping this draft. It literally has like, it had like 2,000 words, and I was like, no, this is not how I want to approach this book, because that's the other thing. Not only am I lacking a fantasy element in the original draft, because the original draft has 15,000 words, and then I had my epiphany. Then I wrote a 2,000 word draft. No, still no. Because I'm trying to find the voice that I want to write it with. I realized in my original draft, which is the 15,000 word one, it's 15,000 words of not my voice that I want. I'm writing it in a very, modern, contemporary way. It was in first person. This is going to be a dual point of view, or it was, because it was in first person. Kind of like a dual POV moment. And then the first person was just not working for me. And it could have worked with the genre before I changed the genre, but I don't think first person is me or my writing style, which I kind of had to learn by writing that draft. I've done first person before, which I think worked for me previously, but while I was in school, I wrote a lot of poetry, and one of the reasons that I switched my major to writing was because I wanted to kind of find my like writing voice, and I did that through poetry, and I realized I like much more of like a purpley, prose-esque writing voice than I originally thought. Obviously, like, I know people have their feelings about purple prose. I think as long as you're doing it in moderation and still focusing like on your plot, it can be done well. And I realized that a kind of like third person omniscient overseeing narrator is the vibe that I really want for my novels. I think that just works way better for me. I think I would have a much easier time writing if it was in that way. I think I realized that I find first person or like a limited narrator limiting. Like, you know what I mean? I think that something that I really like about older books is the way that it's told by like a narrator that's like not necessarily a part of the story, and they're telling it, from a distance. I find that very interesting, and I just don't read a lot of books like that anymore, unless I read like older books. Like I'm reading East of Eden. Love it. I'm loving it, and I would love to kind of incorporate that style into this novel, so that combined with an urban fantasy sort of genre, it's also, I don't want to say a dystopian or a utopian, it's set like in the future a little bit, so it's like I'm having fun with time, space, maybe because it's like kind of an alternate future. Fantasy, I'm thinking of ways to like add magic to my story. Overall, this epiphany that I had and this draft that I'm working on right now is bringing back like an excitement for writing novels that I haven't had since I was like before high school. So I'm having a good time. The draft is very short so far actually, because I'm kind of figuring out where I need to be at with whether I want an outline or not. But other than that, here's a squirrel who's absolutely munching on that acorn, splooting and relaxing. So yeah, that's how I'm gonna be after I finish recording this video.